So let's pick up the story right where we left off with the narrator, our time traveler, kind of climbing down, being surrounded, and feeling overwhelming fear about these Morlocks that he just discovered are carnivorous. He smells blood in the air, and there's just a sense of fear and dread because his last match has just gone out and he's been plunged into darkness. So here we are. I have thought since how particularly ill-equipped I was for such an experience. When I had started with the time machine, I had started with the absurd assumption that the men of the future would certainly be infinitely ahead of ourselves in all of their appliances. I had come without arms, without medicine, without anything to smoke. At times I missed tobacco frightfully. Even without enough matches. If only I'd thought of a Kodak. I could have flashed that glimpse of the underworld in a second and examined it at leisure. But, as it was, I stood there with only the weapons and the powers that nature had endowed me with. Hands, feet, and teeth. These and 4 safety matches that still remained on me. So again, what's the author's purpose right here? He's creating a sense of dread that he realizes he got so caught up in, can I travel back in time and stuff like that, that he didn't come equipped. He didn't think it through. He didn't have things like a camera or a Kodak. He didn't bring medicine or arms or guns. He even regrets, not having cigarettes, tobacco, something to smoke. He's just totally unprepared for this experience, and he's dreading it and regretting it now. So let's finish this chapter. I was afraid to push my way in among all this machinery in the dark, and it was only with my last glimpse of light I discovered that my store of matches had run low. It had never occurred to me until that moment that there was any need to economize them, and I had wasted almost half the box in astonishing the overworlders, to whom fire was a novelty. Now, as I say, I had 4 left, and while I stood in the dark, a hand touched mine. Lank fingers came feeling over my face, and I was sensible of a peculiar, unpleasant odor. I fancied I heard the breathing of a crowd of those dreadful little beings about me. I felt the box of matches in my hand being gently disengaged, and other hands behind me plucking at my clothing. The sense of these unseen creatures examining me was indescribably unpleasant. The sudden realization of my ignorance of their ways of thinking and doing came home to me very vividly in the darkness. I shouted at them as loudly as I could. They started away, and then I could feel them approaching me again. They clutched at me more boldly, whispering odd sounds to each other. I shivered violently and shouted again, rather discordantly. This time they were not so seriously alarmed, and they made a queer laughing noise as they came back at me. I will confess I was horribly frightened. I determined to strike another match and escape under the protection of its glare. I did so, and eking out the flicker with a scrap of paper from my pocket, I made good my retreat to the narrow tunnel. But I had scarce entered this when my light was blown out, and in the blackness I could hear the Morlocks rustling like wind among leaves and pattering like the rain as they hurried after me. In a moment I was clutched by several hands, and there was no mistaking that they were trying to haul me back. I struck another light and waved it at their dazzled faces. You can scarce imagine how nauseating and human they looked, those pale, chinless, and great lidless pinkish gray eyes, as they stared in their blindness and bewilderment. But I did not stay to look, I promise you. I retreated again, and when my second match had ended, I struck my third. It had almost burnt through when I reached the opening into the shaft. I lay down on the ledge, for the throb of the great pump below made me giddy. Then I felt sideways for the projecting hooks, and, as I did so, my feet were grasped from behind, and when I was violently tugged backwards, I lit my last match, and it incontinently went out. But I had my hand on the climbing bars now, and kicking violently, I disengaged myself from the clutches of the Morlocks, and was speedily clambering up the shaft, while they stayed peering and blinking up at me. All but one little wretch who followed me for some way, and well nigh secured my boot as a trophy. That climb seemed interminable to me. With the last 20 or 30 feet of it, a deadly nausea came upon me. I had the greatest difficulty in keeping my hold. The last few yards was a frightful struggle against this faintness. Several times my head swam, and I felt all the sensations of falling. At last, however, I got over the well mouth somehow, and staggered out of the ruin into the blinding sunlight. It fell upon my face. Even the soil smelt sweet and clean. Then I remember Weena kissing my hands and ears, and the voices of others among the Eloi. Then for a time I was insensible. So just a really quick, brief summary. So we get this terrifying ordeal right at the end here of these Morlocks trying to grab him and feeling upon him and stuff like that, and him shouting at them to get away, and realizing that they're not really scared of him. It's only the light, because they've been living underground for so darn long. The light is painful to them. He even talks about their lidless, pinkish gray eyes. So you can see they've adapted to life beneath. They're not used to light, even the light of a match. So as he scurries away and runs away from them, they keep trying to pull him back into their dark world. He's got to be absolutely terrified. And even one of them gets his boot as a trophy. And he finally gets up there, and there's Weena kind of kissing him and, feeling assured that he's okay and stuff, and members of the other Eloi, and then it seems that he passes out. I was insensible. He kind of faints from just exhaustion and relief that this whole ordeal with the Morlocks is over. So, hopefully you enjoyed Chapter 9 and stuff like that. Again, if you have questions, make sure to send me an email, and maybe we can arrange a Google Meet or something, but I hope you're staying safe. Make sure you go to the threaded discussion tab, open up your team's Google Doc, and discuss the question we have there. Stay safe, everybody. See you soon.